Hawke and Peacock gear up for the great election debate. A 7-year-old child at the centre of an international custody battle. And in cricket, Australia heading for victory in the World Series Cup.
This is the 10 Evening News.
Good evening. Prime Minister Bob Hawke is facing his second defamation writ of the election campaign, this time from National Party leader Charles Blunt. Mr Blunt says his solicitor will be contacting the Prime Minister in the morning. Meanwhile, Mr Hawke and opposition leader Andrew Peacock have spent the day preparing for tonight's televised debate, which is likely to set the tone for next week's campaigning.
Any suggestion of pre-debate anxiety was well hidden by the carefully choreographed pictures of a calm-looking Andrew Peacock. Tired television crews decided to make a point about early morning assignments by appearing in their bathrobes.
I've heard about Andrew's army, but you blokes look like you come from McHale's Navy or something.
It was all quiet at the Prime Minister's Sydney headquarters today, with campaigning suspended until tonight's main event. The debate will be telecast live from the ABC studio, and this afternoon saw last-minute inspections by members of the Prime Minister's staff and Liberal Party chiefs. The last such debate, in 1984, was judged to have been won by Andrew Peacock. So all eyes tonight will be on the Prime Minister's performance.
But in a way, and ironically, this event, which was seen as an important occasion for the leader of the opposition, has almost become more important for the incumbent because of the fumbling start.
Tonight's debate is still 4 weeks away from polling day, and any policy distinctions made this evening could well be forgotten by voters. What will be remembered, however, is how the leaders behave, whether they're relaxed or rattled. But even before the leaders open their mouths, there's an argument about the use of notes and documents, with the Prime Minister set to make an issue out of Mr Peacock's planned use of cue cards. And the war of words is bubbling on another front. National Party leader Charles Blunt is considering legal action against the Prime Minister over the latter's remarks about the National Party's attitude towards women.
If he was any sort of a man, he'd apologise. I mean, I thought it was a disgraceful statement.
Mr Blunt says he won't sue if he gets an apology from Mr Hawke. Maxine McHugh for the 10 Evening News.
The father of a child at the centre of an international custody battle is tonight flying to New Zealand to try to win back his daughter. 7-year-old Hilary Fordich went into hiding after accusations that he'd sexually assaulted her.
Hilary's father, Dr Eric Fordich, was first in the air to Christchurch, claiming the child was told both parents were dead.
Hilary was told that her parents were dead, yes, absolutely. No question. Absolute fact.
His former wife, Dr Elizabeth Morgan, was earthbound in Washington, fighting to have her passport returned by the courts.
It's not what I want, but what is right for Hilary, and that's what I've always been asking, that someone listen to what my child needs.
Dr Morgan spent 2 years in jail for contempt of court after sending her child into hiding. She claimed Hilary was sexually assaulted by her father on court-ordered visits. This secret video allegedly showing the child's distress at leaving home with her father. It's now been revealed Dr Morgan's parents took Hilary to England, then on to New Zealand, where they now want the courts to protect them.
If they wash their hands of the case and send this child back, she will be destroyed.
How do you feel about the way that Hilary's coping with the situation at the moment? I think she's coping very well.
It's now up to the New Zealand legal system to decide the fate of the child, but experts say it's likely she'll be sent back to the US and another round of custody battles. Guy Bevilacqua for the 10 Evening News.
Protests today on Sydney's North Shore over medium-density housing developments in the area. Opposition leader Bob Carr was the target of demonstrators as he opened 17 new villa homes. The locals are worried there'll be increased traffic on their roads and extra strain on the sewage system. While not opposed to all medium-density housing, they want stricter government guidelines. And a 7-month-long controversy at an Assyrian church in Sydney's west flared again today. One faction, which has been barred from using the premises, returned to hold a mass.
You must not go into that church. Understand?
A court order prohibits the faction from using the church, but the bishop in charge gave them permission for a special mass this morning, and then he withdrew it. Police and security guards kept watch at the front, but it didn't prevent some of the faction forcing a door.
We are conducting the church mass today, and we will be leaving and not coming back to this church anymore.
Victorian Water Police have confirmed a second life jacket has been found from what is believed to be the yacht Great Expectations, missing in Bass Strait since the beginning of last month. There were 6 people aboard the boat, and their disappearance led to a massive air and sea search.
Victoria's Water Police decided to launch another search off the state's rugged west coast today for any trace of the missing yacht Great Expectations. The search included close examination of more than 100 kilometres of coastline and up to several kilometres offshore. Great Expectations was last seen in Bass Strait on the 5th of January, returning to Melbourne after competing in the yacht race to Devonport. The Sea Safety Centre in Canberra called off its search after a week, but a private search funded by friends and family of the missing 6 on board and public donations continued. The police decision to look again followed the surprise discovery yesterday of a life jacket floating in the water off Moonlight Heads, and police are almost certain it's from the missing yacht. Today they revealed it was the second life jacket found. The first turned up in Western Port Bay on the 13th of February, but at the time police thought it could have been a cruel hoax. The second life jacket changed that.
The writing on both appears to be identical.
It appears to be identical, yes.
Sergeant Soding says a decision whether or not to launch another major search will be made tonight, but after 7 weeks, it's hard to imagine any of the Great Expectations crew surviving. Jim Brown for the 10 Evening News.
There's been flash flooding in southeast Queensland. Several roads in the Brisbane area have been cut. The Ipswich Highway is covered by up to half a metre of water as well, and police have been urging motorists to be extremely careful. The rain, though, has been generally welcomed, bringing relief to farmers and growers after several dry weeks. Ahead on the 10 Evening News, the death of one of the singing stars of the 50s, and British helicopters go to the rescue of a ship under attack in the Mediterranean. British Air Force helicopters from Cyprus were called into the rescue of a Mediterranean ferry attacked off the Lebanese coast. 1 person was killed, 18 wounded in the attack, which is being blamed on Syria.
The ship returned to Cyprus this afternoon. The damage to its starboard side was considerable, around 20 shell holes after a gunboat opened fire. It all happened about 30 miles off the Lebanese coast and 7 hours out of Larnaca, when the captain of the ferry was challenged by the gunboat, but apparently was given no time to reply. Earlier today, RAF Wessex helicopters arrived at Larnaca Airport after they airlifted the injured from the ship. From here, they were taken to a local hospital where they were treated for cuts and for shrapnel wounds. Tonight, 1 person is said to be in a critical condition.
To my astonishment, that after the big explosion, there was small explosions like bullets.
The attack then was no mistake. The ferry is a lifeline to Lebanese Christians escaping their own civil war between General Aoun's army and Samir Jarjar's militia. The port of Junis, 6 miles north of Beirut, where the ferry was heading, is controlled by the Lebanese militia, and the town is regularly being shelled by the Christian army. There are reports that gunboats of Aoun's are patrolling these waters, and that the ferry could have been seen as a militia-related target.
Former American President Jimmy Carter is among hundreds of United Nations and international observers who are in Nicaragua to oversee today's national elections. He says if the poll proves to be clean, he'll urge the Bush administration to establish normal relations with that country.
If opposition candidate Violeta Chamorro wins the Nicaraguan elections, U.S. policy could change overnight. 5 years of economic sanctions imposed against the Sandinista government would be lifted, diplomatic relations restored. If Sandinista leader Daniel Ortega wins, and Nicaraguan polls say he will, the Bush White House will be under a lot of pressure to live with it.
But if they judge the elections to be free and fair, I think we would be politically and morally obligated to recognize the results, in as much as we've been calling for democracy in Nicaragua for a decade, and lift the embargo.
Still, it will take more than a fair election to convince the Bush administration that Daniel Ortega is committed to democracy. In particular, the U.S. wants Ortega to stop sending weapons to guerrillas in El Salvador. Ortega, in apparent response to that demand, told the New York Times he is ready to do just that. Still, a change in U.S. policy toward Nicaragua will be a slow process if Ortega wins. 10 years of hostilities will not fade quickly. The Sandinistas, said one State Department official, have a decade of lies and broken promises behind them.
The Space Shuttle Atlantis is on the launch pad, due for takeoff in about 2 hours' time. On board, 5 US military officers and a secret cargo believed to be a spy satellite for monitoring Soviet arms activities. A massive 134-car pile-up in West Germany has left 6 people dead, 43 seriously injured. Another 30 people were slightly hurt in the motorway crash. Thick morning fog, heavy traffic and reckless fast driving all contributed to the multiple collision. Most West German motorways don't have speed limits. And Indian Customs have made one of their largest hauls of smuggled goods. They seized a gold and silver consignment worth $1.5 million. The precious metals were discovered in the petrol tank of a Turkish tourist bus when it crossed the Indian border from Pakistan. And Soviet cleanup crews are working to prevent a major environmental disaster. A train crash has raised fears that hundreds of tons of crude oil leaking from derailed wagons will pollute a scenic lake. If the oil isn't contained and removed before the spring thaw sets in, it will seep into the lake, destroying animal and plant life. Singing star Johnny Ray has died in Los Angeles. He recorded a string of million-selling hits in the 1950s.
Come on in here, Alexander's Ragtime Band. Come on in here, come on in
Johnny Ray dead at the age of 63. Anti-apartheid demonstrators clashed with police at London's Heathrow Airport as the first of England's rebel cricketers returned from their South African tour. The tour was cut short because of demonstrations in South Africa.
It's a sight which has dogged the cricketers ever since they signed up for the tour. With the captain Mike Gatting still in South Africa, most of the anger was directed at David Graveney, the tour manager. John Embury slipped away through a side door to avoid the scuffles.
Everybody's entitled to their view. I've played cricket for 17 years. The same things aimed at me before, so...
Surely not in quite such strong terms.
No, but, you know, people, I realise that the question of South Africa is an emotive subject.
But the end of the tour may not be the end of the protests. The non-stop picket outside the South African embassy is in its 1048th and final day. Now that Nelson Mandela is free, the demonstrators intend to devote their energy to pursuing the rebel cricketers this summer.
In sports news, on tour at Goulburn now, Graham Hughes with tonight's sport.
Thank you, Anne. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, we'll have all the rugby league action from here in Goulburn after the break, plus a super performance by our Australian cricketers in the World Series Cup second final.
Brilliant captaincy by Alan Border. Well bowled, Peter Taylor.
Well, in cricket, Australia is heading towards a crushing victory over Pakistan to wrap up the World Series Cup at the SCG. In the second final, Australia set Pakistan 256 for victory, a target that has proved way beyond them on the day.
Moody was in form from the first ball. Ian Taylor was set for a century stand.
Lovely shot from Mark Taylor. Split the gap there.
But on 44, Moody was stumped.
That is. Off the pad.
Jones picked up where he left off on Friday.
That's beautifully placed.
Taylor went for 76, his highest score in international limited overs cricket.
Waqar at mid-wicket has taken the catch.
Only 4 runs had been added when Jones was run out for 46.
He was behind the stumps.
Steve Waugh was dropped for brother Mark, who took his chance. But with the runs adding up to a big total, Waugh and Border got mixed up.
This is a big chance, Mr. Stumps. Gone!
O'Donnell went cheaply and Healy hit out as Pakistan continued to make more fielding mistakes.
Dropped.
The last ball should have been just a single. Imran exploded, disgusted at the fielding mistakes. Imran's mood wouldn't have changed much when it came to batting. Ramiz was trapped by Alderman. It was 2 for 6.
2 for 6, yes! Just a shuffle across, that would plumb.
Wasim Akram came in at first drop with his big hitting form.
Very well caught.
Salim Malik's departure made it 3 for 52.
Full toss.
On 36, Wasim tried a big hit off Taylor.
And brilliant captaincy by Alan Border.
Imran couldn't steer Pakistan out of trouble. It was 5 for 72. The final knockout blow was delivered by Border when he ran out Miandad. Owen Martin for the 10 Evening News.
In Rugby League, North Sydney is through to the second semi-final of the Channel 10 Challenge Cup. The Bears beat Newcastle this afternoon by 16 points to 12 for the right to take on the winner between Balmain and Canberra.
Two big packs tore into each other from the start of this match.
Very solid tackle on Harrigan.
No, that was a crushing tackle again. Drove the guy sideways, really belted him.
And the fans at the Workers' Arena didn't have long to wait for the first try. A clever one too.
Tools played it forward. That's a try.
Then, in a rare appearance in North's half, the Knights' new star, Ashley Gordon, produced something from nothing.
Down the blind side with Doyle. Away for Gordon. And Gordon has just run straight around his opposite man to score.
A great conversion from Gordon too, and it was 8-6 to Norths. In a more even second quarter, in-form centre Jeff Doyle almost sent Newcastle in again.
Doyle, another fine run from this man. He's got Hagan with him. Give it to Hagan, but the pass was forward.
Norths was stretched, and the next try was a softie.
Straight across the field, steps easily. Well, that's the North Sydney of old.
12-8 to Newcastle at half-time. In a third quarter full of heavy hits and horrible handling, Norths edged closer through a penalty goal and produced the only significant raid.
Keeping it alive, North Sydney.
Shepherd.
Another Norths raid in the final quarter resulted in a critical moment.
He was taken high by Walters.
Referee Eddie Ward sent Walters off for the tackle on Martin with 15 minutes to go. A touch of the old Norths came out after that. They missed 2 simple penalty goal attempts. But wait a minute, the 1990 Bears are a different side.
Lorimer wins through MacArthur.
Norths win 16-12. 2 first-round losers in the challenge held a trial match at Belmore, and Manly, without new props, Bella and Roberts, struggled to hold the Bulldogs. The try to Gillespie made it 6-0. Manly levelled the scores, though, in typical fashion. Des Hasler, the finisher. The match opened up after that. Canterbury's new purchase from Moree, Ewan McGrady, showed plenty of attacking skills. Finally, Paul Langmack produced a less spectacular effort to seal the match, 10-6. Bill Woods for the 10 Evening News.
In an upset, the Sydney Swans have beaten defending premiers Hawthorn in the first round, I should say, of the AFL Foster's Cup. Playing in Canberra, the Swans held on by 9 points.
Canberra's lobbying to put a team in the Australian Football League, but if today's crowd is any indicator, more work may have to be done. Those who did attend were treated to free-flowing football. Dermot Brereton opening the scoring.
Brereton from 42 metres. Shoots towards goal. Good-looking start for the Hawks.
Jason Dunstall did likewise soon after to show the Hawks had lost none of their grand final form.
That is champagne football by Hawthorn. Shades of last September.
But the Swans were far from overawed. Rookies Jim West and Shane Fell flew high and were on target in the first quarter to give Sydney a 20-point lead. The Swans have lacked up front firepower for some time, but after today's performance, Fell may provide the answer.
Oh, another one. Oh, this kid can play.
The Hawks hit back with 3 goals in as many minutes in the third quarter, but Fell's 5 helped Sydney outpoint the Premiers, and the Swans go on to meet Carlton next week in Melbourne. Andrew McKinlay for the 10 Evening News.
New South Wales has entered a long drought in pacing's premier event, with Thorate winning the Dominion final over in Adelaide. Thorate's trainer Brian Hancock had opted to drive the stablemate Wiona Chief, who had finished third. Here's the closing stages.
250 metres to go. Jamin in the leader. There's the run. Thorate got off the rail, dashes up in a stride and takes the lead. Howard James, the substitute driver, takes the lead on Thorate. Jamin onto the whip and coming home down the outside. Wiona Chief and through the middle, Garlic Skipper, but Thorate is going to win convincingly. Thorate wins by 2 lengths, Garlic Skipper.
Just another beautiful day here in the country in Goulburn, and right after the news, of course, it's Balmain taking on Canberra in the grand final replay of '89.
Thanks very much, Graham. Good calling to you as well. In just a moment, the weather news.